My name is Glen Garvin. I'm a Group General Manager for Dominion Dealer Solutions. Spent most of my career working on the inventory side of the business. Started a business back in the early 90s in New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania. Sold that to Trader Publishing, which became Dominion Solutions, and I've been working for them for ever since, really. So spent most of my career with the dealer specialty side. For some of you are customers of them or know what they do, but also serving a lot of data internal companies doing data polling, data aggregation, pulling inventory together, creating massive databases and analytical data for us to make something out of. So that most of my world has been involved in that data mining and data putting together. Operationally, we've got about 400 people who go out and collect data, but I'm not going to talk about any of those things today. So what I am going to talk to you about is really in three sections. I'm going to start with mobile trends, give you a little bit of information that's more useful, you'll be able to apply some of this information as we learn about it. But really, that whole bit's going to be to kind of get your frame up of where today's consumer is from a mobile environment, why it's so important, and then we're going to look at mobile web and some new evolutions in mobile web. And you heard, if anyone stayed for the award ceremony last night, you heard Brian Pash talk a little bit about some of those new technologies that are out in there for your websites. And then finally, I'll wrap up and talk about how you can use an app if you don't have one for your dealership, or if you do have one, how you can best utilize an app in your dealership for your customers, and why that's different from mobile web if you're considering which things to do and what to do first, and why to choose the ones that you do. So we'll walk through those things. First, to get your brain moving, I'm going to put up a list of 8 countries up here on the board. And we'll take a minute here, no cheating, putting this online to try and figure it out, which is ruining trivia questions nationally on all these cell phones and everything, that people go out and can look up everything. But for adoption, smartphone adoption, I'd like you guys just put these countries in order of where you think, of what you think these countries or smartphone adoption is. So you just write that down on a piece of paper right there, and if anyone gets them all right without cheating, we'll make sure I send you a prize. I didn't bring one with me, but I'll find something.
Looking for you to take the time and the effort to move forward in the aspect of treating that influence. How many of you by raising hands actually take photos?
It's learning by osmosis. When I get quiet and you can hear from another room, you can take in some of that too, so that's a plus. All right, well, I'll give you a couple more seconds to take a shot at it. We'll grade on the honor scale. Anybody have Singapore number 1? Well done, well done. Now, any of the Singapores get Australia or Israel up there at top 2? You guys did real good. Who got Singapore? That's pretty good. That's pretty strong. So Singapore is number 1. And this, none of you guys are probably selling vehicles globally, and if it does, it doesn't necessarily mean smartphone adoption is huge for you. But just in general knowledge, I mean, wow, you look at the opportunity that represents down here, and you see China and India at 6 and 3% of the country's adoption, and what the revolutions, or the internal, what I call industrial revolution, but the technological evolution of those countries and how they're growing, you can imagine this is going to just, in years from now, just exponentially grow. So I'll give you a minute to digest this, but this graph right here is going to talk about smartphone platform share for primarily, I mean, if we go into some of these smaller people down here, but really looking at the Droid phones, the Apple, your iPhones, and then BlackBerry. And you can see this goes a little bit more than a year out through May of 2012. But you can take a look here from where this was in April 2011 through May of this year and what the change is. So you can see Droid's really shot up, almost more than 50% of market share. Apple continues to grow. And then we've got BlackBerry, which is, that number's now below 10% market share. A show of hands, how many iPhone Apple users in the room? How about Droid? We have Blackberries?
Go on,
Good. Anybody got anything else? Any of the other ones down there? So what it tells you, what it tells you really when you look at this is we're getting down. Despite Megan hanging on to a BlackBerry over there, we're hanging on to a two-player. We're really a two-player marketplace. We're looking at Droid and Apple users have really taken over the marketplace, and without anything on the horizon. Really, the game's about these two operating platforms from a mobile standpoint. We're talking about everything from a Droid to an Apple device. So when I get asked a lot of questions, think you're going to have an app for BlackBerry, you guys going to program for that? Our answer is probably not. It just doesn't make sense from where that market share is going and the uses of what people do with their phones from these platforms. Done a lot of research on this, and you get some spirited debates between the Droid users and the Apple users, and they can be a lot of fun to talk about. But the Apple user is a more engaged user. They use more apps. They do more. The session that was in here previously, we were showing some statistics from Google, and I was talking to one of the guys afterwards, and he was just talking about how much more engaged an Apple user is with the apps they use and the things they use, and when they look at the scans and like from a QR code reader, that so much of their activity is coming from an Apple device versus a Droid. Even though Droid has a higher percent of market share, more of the activity is coming from Apple, which means in most of these things, the Apple users are using more apps, they're more active with the things on their phone than the Droid users. But still, we're talking about two platforms that are dominating the market at this point.
No attention to weighting of options. Is there anyone currently?
Okay, so let's take a look at what the mobile content usage is. What do people use their phones for when so when you look at the people who are using smartphones, what do they do with their phones? And again, the same thing from ComScore, and it's going to show us that same trend from last April through May of this year. And you can see, send a text message. Now, and then this is boggling my mind, because if there's 25% of people who have a smartphone that haven't sent a text message in the last 30 days with it, you wonder what do they do with their smartphone if they don't send a text message with it, and what the actual usage is. That boggles my mind. But you look at the things that are growing the most, and we're going to look at this apps and things. Two things we're going to talk a lot about today: apps and the browser. So they're using the browser, that's increasing, it's growing, and the number of apps and the usage of apps, that's growing tremendously as well. And remember, there's 25% of people out there who apparently just use it for a phone. So, or should be taken away from them. Okay, and you see some of these other smaller things out here which are continuing to grow, games and social networking. But we'll focus on the apps and the browser and how to utilize those as we go forward. Now, when we talk about the apps and the browser, what do people do? A lot of you guys have a mobile site. You may have an app already. You may be considering purchasing an app. You may have these two usages. But what do people do? Think about a car shopper. What's their activity level going to look like when they go for shopping for a vehicle? Are they going to use an app, or are they going to browse for a vehicle? And once they purchased it, what are they going to do those usages for? And the same thing, you think about yourself, if you were to go shop at Best Buy, would you be likely to download an app from Best Buy? You might, or might you just go to a website to look something up? So you'll see that in this next graph. It's going to show you here the percentage. It takes a little bit, again, to digest this, but if we look at the red component of 100% of people who shopped online with their mobile devices, and we can see here 73% of the shoppers use their browser versus an app. So 27% of people use an app to shop with versus 73% shopped with using their browser. And you can see this as you move through from shopping to search to entertainment, how the different functions and different things they do are going to vary. For instance, if you get down to Connect, so what are we talking about here? Facebook, right? So you're using Facebook, or they're using a Twitter app or something. They're using 69% of these people are using an app versus going to the mobile website for that. It makes sense for that usage, and that's probably continuing to grow in each of those directions. Again, this is somewhat off topic when we talk about social networking. I thought it was pretty interesting. Let's see if I can find this on here. There's a so when asked about, and this is just for automotive knowledge for this, but when asked about when moms were asked if they had discussed the following products over social media: alcohol, apparel, appliances, automobiles, educational institutions, electronics, entertainment, food, household products, magazine, personal care products, restaurants, sports, telecom, and travel. Only entertainment was higher than automotive for moms who had discussed that in social media. So entertainment makes sense, but even restaurants, I was like, I boggled my mind. So restaurants, even automotive for moms was higher than it is. That tells you that people, you guys all know that already. It's not a social media session we're talking about here, but just from that connect standpoint, take you off a little tangent on that. But that how important that social media really is, and that people are out there discussing it. And so if 80% of moms had discussed an automotive purchase on social media, on Facebook or Twitter or someplace to get information, or that potentially they were going out shopping for a vehicle. It does tie in a little bit when we get to an app and how you might be able to utilize that. So take a little interest on where they're doing. So to recap, kind of from the summary standpoint of where we've been, we know mobile adoption is growing. Who tracks, from the dealerships in the room, who tracks the percentage of people who visit their website from mobile adoption? What do you got? What percentage? Like 60%? That's huge. Okay?
Yeah, we're more like 40.
Like 40%? Still high. The industry average we're talking about, I mean, it's typically about 25% is what I hear. Now, it depends on the brands and how much you push the mobile devices for this. Sometimes you see, you get Volkswagen certain demographics and different things, you'll get 45, 50%. What's that?
Is that kind of Subaru franchise?
The Subaru, so depending on your demographics in certain places, you're going to get more engagement on that. But it is really, really interesting to see what percentage of mobile traffic. It is growing exponentially, the amount of people who are hitting your mobile website from a browser. It's just going to continue, from a mobile web browser, it's continuing to grow and grow and grow and grow. So it's important to realize that. Yeah?
Do you have any insight as to which devices are really the ones that are being most utilized? Like, for instance, from my perspective, we ran some numbers and we're noticing that obviously mobile's outpacing our desktop, our desktop interaction, but on top of that, it's at first Apple and Android were kind of in there. Now it just seems like Apple has completely overshadowed all of the mobile devices. Is that
that's
as well?
Definitely typical. I think the last stat I looked at was probably 2-to-1 Apple to Droid devices, and I think that's consistent with what we talked about before. The Apple user, is more engaged with their phone and utilizes it more than a Droid user does. Obviously, that's huge generalities on usage, and I imagine the proud Droid users who raise their hand nice and loud in here when we probably use their devices that much as well. I had it explained to me by someone recently, which makes a little bit more sense. An iPhone purchase is something you consider and most people buy and plan for because it's a big expense. Often a Droid user doesn't want to buy an iPhone, doesn't want to do that, or it's the next upgrade and they get the free device that they use and probably aren't as engaged in using it in their activities. But it does show the more that you get more use from an iPhone coming forward than you do from a Droid device. And I think one of the goals there is focusing on those two platforms and just making sure you're good at both of them. Yes, sir.
Your one chart said that music was extremely low and had a lot of growth.
That what did?
Music.
Music.
There's a lot of talk about Pandora and advertising on Pandora. Is that still really in the growth stage? Is that something that should be
and I'll go back to that as well. I've thought that same question, and no one's asked me that question on there yet, but I wonder if this music is more of your traditional player on here versus using an app like a Pandora or Spotify or one of those to do that. So, I don't know enough about that, that advertising platform and how valuable it is. I think anything else, you got to track your return on investment, see if it's worthwhile. If there's buyers there and it proves to be worthwhile, and ironically they happen to be an exhibitor here, so it's probably a good time to talk to them. But yeah, so music, I don't know. Hey, for everybody in the room, do you listen to music on your device?
Yeah.
I do. I think the majority of people do. You also got the 25% who don't know how to send a text message on their phone, so they're probably not listening to music either. So we're going back to this. Dominated by two platforms. mobile adoption's growing. You know, we see the apps and the browser continues to grow as the two biggest areas of what people are using their phones for. They use apps and mobile devices are used for two separate things. So now, while we saw like shopping can be primarily a browser, people will still use an app for it. But the majority of people are going to use a browser to do that. Same thing for search. They're going to utilize that for search. And if they use an app for search, most likely they're going to use the Google app for search. So you're looking at the different components of the way people use their devices. And remember, this is still in growth mode. I mean, a few years ago, this was way far away from what it is now. And the amount of people, we were all talking about mobile being a future platform, and we need a plan for mobile. And you hear people say, "Hey, build for the small screen first. Think about the small screen versus the big screen." And most people say, "Nah, I know my traffic's all coming from the big screen, and that's where I got to be, and that's what I need to focus on." And that's what we did. And I think you guys are all here, and you're leading the trend. There's a lot of dealerships who don't even know what AutoCon is, and they're still not thinking about that mobile device. So this gives you an advantage in thinking about this. When we think about consumers, my personal feeling is, I think a consumer is not going to do a whole lot of shopping through an app for your dealership. That goes the same thing to say for whether it's Cars.com's app or even CarMax's app, where they have tons of inventory, or AutoTrader.com's app. I don't think they're going to use that. Someone will, but the majority is I don't think they use that for an app. They're going to go to a mobile web browser and do a search through potentially Cars.com or AutoTrader. But the limitations on an app, I think, are constricting. It may not always be that way, but today I think people are still using mobile web for that purpose. It can be, but at this, building the app, true.
Maintain it, update it, it's a continuous basis.
So that there is some options, I think, to that. Now, once you have a consumer, I think an app is really where you can get, and that's why we talk about customer loyalty on this. That the loyalty factor, you can really keep a customer bringing back. I think last night, whether it was Jim or one of those guys when they were speaking from stage said, about how having we don't spend enough time and money with the customers that we already have, and how to focus on them. So this is where I think that really plays in. But first, we'll talk about a mobile website. I asked the question, if I'm going to do one thing first, should I focus on, I don't have a good mobile website and I don't have an app, which one should I do first? I would tend to think you want to make sure you've got a mobile presence for your website first. You want to be able to have something so when someone goes to your website, because I'll tell you, I can ask, and I know I'm going to get a lot of people nodding their heads on this, if you go to a website and you have to pinch and pull to find what you want, how long do you stay on that site? Yeah, you're gone in a matter of minutes, seconds, right? You're just like, I'm not going to mess around this, trying to find the button to push on this whole page. If it doesn't respond to it, you lose respect for the company that you're looking at, you get frustrated with them, and you leave the site. So you want to have that, because you're going to frustrate your customers if you pull up your website on a mobile device and it doesn't render properly, you're going to deliver a bad experience to your customers, and you don't. Okay, so I'm going to show you a site here, and we're going to I'll go into the live demo phase here in a minute, and hopefully can pull that off. But first, I'm going to show you this site with some screenshots from the Boston Globe. We're going to talk about adaptive and responsive design. I'm show of hands in the room. Anyone know what that, when I say that, adaptive or responsive design means? Okay, so we've got a couple of people here. This eliminates your need. One of the best things when I heard about this, and the best way to show it, is that it eliminates the need to keep multiple sites. A mobile site from one place, and I'm going to manage the content and how it looks in one place, and I'm going to need it to render differently on a Droid versus an iPhone versus an iPad, and every new tablet that comes out, I got to test it and make sure it's all right, versus my traditional website, and I got to manage content on both of them, and it's a headache. Okay, so that headache gets absolved with responsive design. This responsive design is going to show, here's a Boston Globe website, and this was, to my knowledge, it was the first really at least major site that utilized this technology. And you can see here you've got basically 3 columns of content. You've got the guy on the bike here with some articles underneath it, a mid-column, you got some advertising over here on the right-hand side, full header, weather up in the corner, yeah, pretty traditional site. So we take that page, and I'm going to take it here and put it on a iPad. So I turn that same page on a vertical edition of an iPad, and you can see the whole third column over here that was the advertising is gone. Your header has switched to just 3 items. Your weather's still up here, but your header's only 3. You still got the guy on the bike and the 3 articles here, and some small articles over on this side.